trying to divide this country into pieces." Ibrahim Traoré slammed his fist on the map spread across the table. The newly appointed ministers stared in shock. It had been only a week since he had settled into the palace, and Traoré's discovery could change the future of Burkina Faso. 2 days ago, I found a secret compartment behind the former president's private cabinet, said Traoré. This was inside. The map was a detailed plan showing Burkina Faso's rich mineral deposits, with French notes written all over it. Certain regions of the country were marked with red ink, with the names of large corporations written next to them. The plan is clear: to turn our country into an economic colony. Defense Minister Colonel Zungrana cautiously asked, "Were you able to determine where it came from?" Traoré shook his head. "No, but there are traces leading to Paris. And someone." He pointed to an empty chair in the room. "Someone at this table is leaking information. After this meeting, I will form a special team. We will find the traitors." 2 hours later, when Traoré returned to the palace, Security Chief Paul Zita met him at the door, concern on his face. The historic building of the Burkina Faso presidential palace had seen many secrets within its walls. This colonial-era structure had first housed French colonial administrators, then post-independence leaders. Now, newly appointed President Ibrahim Traoré had made a discovery within these old walls that would change his country's destiny. It had been barely a week since Traoré took power in a military coup. He was in a hurry to keep the promises he had made to the people, fighting corruption, breaking the influence of foreign powers, and using Burkina Faso's rich resources for the benefit of its people. But the obstacles before him were greater than he had imagined. The previous night, while settling into the palace, he had noticed something odd while examining the former president's private study. There was a slight protrusion in the wall behind the bookcase. Instinctively, he decided to examine this protrusion. When he removed the books, he discovered that a section of the wall was movable. It was a small safe, hidden by a simple mechanism. Breaking the safe's code wasn't difficult. The former president's birth date was enough. Inside was a carefully wrapped cylindrical tube. The map inside the tube had blown Traoré's mind. It was a detailed map of all of Burkina Faso, but different from known maps. Mineral deposits, water resources, and strategic points were marked on it. Even more shocking was that the country was divided into regions, with the name of a foreign company written next to each region. He examined the map all night. The notes were in French, and the details of the plan were clearly visible. Burkina Faso's natural resources had been parceled out, distributed to multinational corporations. This was a plan for the economic fragmentation of a country. By morning, he had called an emergency meeting of his newly appointed Council of Ministers. Now, at that meeting, everyone sat silently before the map spread across the table. "Does anyone among you recognize this map?" asked Traoré, looking at each minister's face one by one. No one answered. Everyone was in shock. Deputy Prime Minister Cotter leaned forward to examine the map more closely. "This is incredible. The gold mines in the eastern region are allocated to the French Goldex Company, the uranium deposits in the west to American companies, and the water resources in the south to the British. Special support should be given to farmers in the south. And the most important thing they've hidden on the map," said Traoré, marking the northern region with a red pen, "is here, the lithium deposits discovered in the last 2 years. One of the largest reserves in the world. It wasn't in the reports, but they knew about it. Our budget is all ready." Agriculture Minister Ouedraogo raised his hand. "Mr. President, is this map real? Do we know who it came from? We will sell the luxury vehicles at the presidential palace." Traoré narrowed his eyes. "I'm certain of the map's authenticity. The coordinates, all the names on it are correct. The most surprising thing is finding it in the former president's safe. The previous administration, which came to power through elections, was preparing to parcel out and sell our country. This was a leadership style they weren't accustomed to." Defense Minister Colonel Zungrana cleared his throat. "Were you able to determine where it came from?" Seeing Traoré's determination, the ministers quickly began preparing action plans. Traoré shook his head. "No, but there are traces leading to Paris." He paused, then continued. "What's even more disturbing is, someone at this table is leaking information. For such a detailed plan to be made, someone on the inside had to be helping." When he met with Traoré at the palace, there was concern on his face. The tension in the room suddenly rose. The ministers shifted uncomfortably. "Let me be clear," said Traoré, "I'm not accusing those present here. I chose you, I trust you. But there are some advisors, officials left over from the previous government. And this map shows us that we need to be careful about who we trust." Certain regions of the country were marked with red ink, with the names of large corporations written next to them. Foreign Minister Ouedraogo spoke up. "So what are we going to do now, Mr. President?" Accusing the French could create a diplomatic crisis. We're still very weak. And someone. Traoré raised his hand. We won't accuse anyone. Not yet. First, we'll gather more evidence. After this meeting, I will form a special team, reporting only to me. We will identify the traitors and those behind this plan. Now, newly appointed President Ibrahim Traoré had made a discovery within these old walls that would change his country's destiny. What will we do in the meantime, Mr. President? Asked Energy Minister Compare. Traoré responded with determination. We will do two things. First, we will place all the mining areas, water resources, and strategic points on this map under state control. I'm preparing a decree. Second, we will strengthen our intelligence network within the country. Until we find out who is betraying us, we cannot fully trust anyone. Breaking the safes code wasn't difficult, the former president's birth date was enough. After the meeting, Traoré called his trusted old friend Colonel Zongo to his private room. He showed him the map again. Who is behind this, Zongo? Who are these traitors? Even more shocking was that the country was divided into regions, with the name of a foreign company written next to each region. Zongo examined the map. Most of the companies on the map are French, but there are also American and Chinese companies. This looks like an international conspiracy. By morning, he had called an emergency meeting of his newly appointed Council of Ministers. Yes, but they couldn't have done it without help from the inside, said Traoré. Look, there's a signature in the bottom corner of the map. It's very faint, but I can make it out. JM, does that mean anything to you? No one answered. Zongo frowned. It could be several names. Jean-Marie Cabor, the former Foreign Affairs Advisor. Jacques Metta, the Deputy Minister of Mining. The uranium deposits in the West to American companies. And also Jean Michel, the former economic attaché of the French embassy, added Traoré. Do you know where he is now? And the most important thing they've hidden on the map, said Traoré, marking the northern region with a red pen, is here, the lithium deposits discovered in the last 2 years. No, I believe he left the country after the previous government. It wasn't in the reports, but they knew about it. Traoré walked to the window, looking out at the view of Ouagadougou. Zongo, form a special team. From your most trusted men. First, find this Jean Michel, then his connections inside. But do it quietly. Not a word to anyone. I'm certain of the map's authenticity. Yes, Mr. President. The most surprising thing is finding it in the former president's safe. The next day, Traoré was scheduled to have a planned meeting with the French ambassador. This was his first diplomatic meeting since taking power. With the information he now had, this meeting had become even more important. Ambassador Pierre Dubois arrived punctually at the palace's protocol room. Dressed in an elegant suit, he greeted Traoré with his usual polite manner. Mr. President, congratulations. France is ready to provide all kinds of support for the stability and prosperity of Burkina Faso. Traoré smiled, but his eyes were cold. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Your support is important to us. As you know, our country is going through a difficult period. When he met with Traoré at the palace, there was concern on his face. Of course, and as France, we are always with you. Mining, agriculture, security. We want to strengthen our cooperation in every field. When the doors opened, hundreds of people greeted him with applause. Traoré reached for the drawer of his desk. You touched on an interesting topic. Mining. He pulled out a paper from the drawer. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Do you know a diplomat of yours named Jean Michel? He seems immune to classic diplomatic pressures and has the support of his people behind him. The ambassador flinched slightly, but quickly composed himself. Of course, our former economic attaché. His assignment ended last year, and he returned to Paris. Why do you ask? 2 days later, Sophie's phone rang. I was curious, said Traoré. We've been finding interesting documents lately. Jean Michel's name comes up frequently. Traoré raised his hand for silence. What kind of documents? The ambassador's voice trembled slightly. Various, said Traoré, without going into detail. Also, what do you think about the lithium deposits discovered in our country in the last 2 years? Are French companies interested in this? Sophie, please come in. The ambassador hesitated. Lithium? Yes, of course, it's an important resource for the world. But about new discoveries? I don't have very detailed information. An elderly man stepped forward and took Traoré's hand. Interesting, said Traoré. Because Goldex company seems very interested in these deposits. In fact, some documents show that Goldex is making plans to control the northern region of Burkina Faso. Drops of sweat appeared on the ambassador's forehead. Mr. President, the interest of private companies is natural. But as the French government, we have full respect for the sovereignty of Burkina Faso. I'm sure that's the case, said Traoré. That's why I have a request for you. Relay a message to your friends in Paris. Burkina Faso's resources belong to the people of Burkina Faso, and as the new government, we will review all the old agreements. I don't even have economics training. After the meeting, the ambassador immediately returned to the embassy and sent an urgent message to Paris. Traoré is aware of the map. He may know about the plans. Awaiting urgent instructions. You talk to hundreds of people every day and see the prices of thousands of products. Meanwhile, Colonel Zongo's special team had begun working. They determined where Jean-Michel had gone after leaving the country. He was working at the French consulate in Niamey, the capital of Niger. But more importantly, they found his connection in the palace, Mathieu Ouedraogo, the former president's chief of staff. Mathieu had been kept in his position by the new administration because he was the person who knew the palace operations best. Now, unaware that his phones were being tapped, he was in regular communication with Jean-Michel. Zongo came to Traoré with this information. Mr. President, Mathieu is the traitor. We recorded his conversations with Jean-Michel. They are talking about the map. Mathieu knows you found it and is worried. As you can see, I kept my word. Traoré took a deep breath. We shouldn't arrest him. Not yet. Let's spread disinformation. Let them think we haven't found the map, that we're not aware of such a thing. Meanwhile, continue monitoring all their communications. I want more names, more details. The former supermarket manager Marcel Ouedraogo was now working as a consultant at the Ministry of Agriculture. The plan worked. Mathieu relaxed and began to speak more openly. He informed the embassy that the danger had passed. This gave Traoré and his team the opportunity to map the conspiracy in more detail. Within 2 weeks, the full picture of the conspiracy emerged. Not just France, but America and China were also working to establish spheres of influence in different regions. According to the plan, Burkina Faso would remain officially an independent country, but would be made economically completely dependent on foreign powers. With this information, Traoré made a series of radical decisions. First, he unilaterally suspended all mining agreements. Then, he issued a decree for the nationalization of mines and water resources. Finally, he launched an operation to clean out the traitors inside in one fell swoop. Mathieu and 12 other government officials were arrested on charges of treason. Documents showing more details of the plan were found in their offices in the palace. French Ambassador Dubois was declared a persona non grata and asked to leave the country within 48 hours. International reactions were not slow in coming. France threatened to impose economic sanctions on Burkina Faso, citing interference with democratic processes. America expressed concerns. But Traoré did not back down. In a national television address, he showed the map and other documents to the public. My dear citizens, you see these documents. This was a plan to divide our country into pieces. This was a plan to steal our wealth. But we will no longer allow this. Burkina Faso's resources belong to the people of Burkina Faso, and we will use them for the future of our children. Because each of us is here to build Africa's future. The speech received great support among the people. In the capital Ouagadougou, thousands took to the streets to show support for Traoré. As international pressure increased, an unexpected development occurred. Photos of the map went viral in other African countries as well. Leaders of countries like Mali, Niger, and Chad, suspecting that similar plans might exist for their own countries, launched investigations. This led to the birth of a Pan-African solidarity movement. 2 months later, the West African Economic Community held an extraordinary meeting. At the meeting, an agreement was signed to strengthen control over all natural resources in the region and form a common front against external manipulations. In his speech at this meeting, Traoré said, "I will never forget the day I found the map. That day, I discovered not just a conspiracy, but also an opportunity. The opportunity to show how strong Africa can be when it stands together." This movement was called the Traoré model. A year later, the situation in Burkina Faso had changed dramatically. Mining revenues were now going directly to the state treasury, allowing more resources to be allocated to education, health, and infrastructure projects. The country was still facing challenges, but had taken important steps towards determining its own destiny. Traoré, in the former study of the palace, lost in thought as he looked at the secret compartment where he had first found the map. Sometimes, he said to Colonel Zongo beside him, a country's destiny can be hidden in a secret behind a bookcase. While living behind the high walls of palaces, colonizers stole our resources. The map was now displayed in a special frame in the entrance hall of the presidential palace. Below it was written, "No power can forever suppress a people's desire for freedom and sovereignty. We must draw our power from our people, not from colonial powers." This was a reminder not just for Burkina Faso, But for all of Africa, the continent's true wealth came not from the minerals under the ground, but from the unity and determination of its people. Ibrahim Traoré would be remembered in history not just as a coup leader, but as a hero who fought for his country's true independence. And it all began with a secret map found behind a bookcase.